It always seemed to me that our fellow citizens had two passions, ideas and fornication, without rhyme or reason, so to speak. Still, let us take care not to condemn them. They are not the only ones, for all Europe is in the same boat. I sometimes think of what future historians will say of us. A single sentence will suffice for modern man. He fornicated and read the papers. After that vigorous definition, the subject will be, if I may say so, exhausted. Welcome to Positive Read-Ins. The opening was from Albert Camus' 1956 novel, The Fall. This is also where the great British post-punk band gets its name. This is a strange novel, perhaps not a novel at all, a long monologue, but it is highly readable and full of interesting observations and comments about humanity and society, like the one in the opening. A single sentence will suffice for modern man. He fornicated and read the papers. So kind of very memorable ways of identifying the themes and proclivities of modern times. Before I get into this novel, though, I would like to remind everyone that they can support this channel and discover new literature by purchasing the novel Commuting. You can link to that in the description. You can also link to the Gymnasia Press website, where you can get the short story collection Comorbidities and my first novel, Non-Local. Get all three. Why wouldn't you? As I was saying, The Fall it's a novel in the loosest of terms. It does have a main character, our narrator, whose name is Jean-Baptiste Clements. It's been said that the name Jean-Baptiste is a reference to John the Baptist, a kind of a false prophet, and that this narrator is kind of, as he expresses a lot of contradictions in this book, both false prophet and actual prophet. So both John Baptiste and Jesus himself. I'm not so sure about that. What I will say, though, is he is interested in punishment, he's interested in guilt and what we are here on earth to do as humans. He's thinking about that a lot. So the premise of this book, it begins, it's, as I said, it's in first person, it's a monologue. It speaks often, it goes into the second person, referring to this you character, this lawyer from Paris, but it also feels like it's speaking to us as well. The lawyer from Paris does not say anything throughout this entire book, this monologue that lasts over 5 days. It begins in this bar called Mexico City in Amsterdam, and it continues throughout 5 days in different various settings, several times going back to Mexico City, the bar, but also wandering the canals of Amsterdam and even going to visit an island. And throughout this, we get kind of this increasing confession from John Baptiste, and we find out near the end that he is confessing because he wants to get the person he's confessing to actually confess his own sins. And this is why John Baptiste calls himself a judge penitent. Again, this kind of contradictory character that he presents. He's disturbed, John Baptiste, he's disturbed by a woman who committed suicide some years back. We don't actually get this scene until page 70, but he hints to it even earlier. And the fact that he didn't do anything to help her. And that's, I think, kind of that scene is kind of what brings him into exploring what it means to be here on Earth, and what it means to be part of society, and what does it mean to be free or enslaved. The monologue often presents like, or reflects, Dante's Inferno. There's even a reference to it. Jean-Baptiste says that the canals of Amsterdam are like the rings of hell, but this is a middle class hell that they are in. He's a witty character, this Jean-Baptiste, as you can tell from the passage I read already. So the section where he brings in the suicide that is essentially haunting him for the rest of his life, until the very end, where it appears he's almost dying. He's certainly sick. He's in a sick bed, as he doesn't say he's dying, but it seems to be implied. The back of her neck, cool and damp between her dark hair and coat collar, stirred me. So he's walking. This is again, and he's remembering this time he's walking. He saw this woman on the bridge. He's a womanizer, so he's checking out all these women that he sees, and that's why he's saying she stirred him. But I went on after a moment's hesitation. At the end of the bridge, I followed the quays toward Saint Michel, where I lived. I had already gone some 50 yards when I heard the sound, which, despite the distance, seemed dreadfully loud in the midnight silence, of a body striking the water. I stopped short, but without turning around. Almost at once I heard a cry, repeated several times, which was going downstream. Then it suddenly ceased. The silence that followed, as the night suddenly stood still, seemed interminable. I wanted to run, and yet didn't stir. I was trembling, I believe from cold and shock. I told myself that I had to be quick, and I felt an irresistible weakness steal over me. I have forgotten what I thought then. Too late, too far. Or something of the sort. I was still listening as I stood motionless. Then slowly under the rain, I went away. I informed no one. So this incident seems to be a kind of a great assault on Jean-Baptiste's ego. He's presented with a moment where he could save another person, and he fails to do it. He fails to act, and he's haunted by this. He hears laughter later. He's out on a boat, and he thinks he can see the woman out there again. This is maybe leads him on a journey to try to find himself, to try to lose himself as well. He talks about how years he lost himself through debauchery, and I think he has a very kind of insightful way that he talks about debauchery. It's worth reading, so I'm going to read part of it here. He says, "Alcohol and women provided me, I admit, the only solace of which I was worthy. I'll reveal this secret to you, cher ami. Don't fear to make use of it. Then you'll see that true debauchery is liberating because it creates no obligations." He talks a lot about obligations as well, and this I think, is connected to this idea of the freedom and slavery. In it, you possess only yourself. So in debauchery, you possess only yourself. I think that's very insightful. Hence, it remains the favorite pastime of the great lovers of their own person. It is a jungle without past or future, without any promise above all, nor any immediate penalty. So debauchery, there's no past, there's no present, there's no past, no future. It's just in the moment, the pleasure in the moment, and it's really all about the individual. It's not about the other person. There's no obligations to the other person. The places where it is practiced are separated from the world. On entering, one leaves behind fear and hope. Conversation is not obligatory there. What one comes for can be had without words, and often indeed without money. Ah, I beg you, let me pay honor to the unknown and forgotten women who helped me then. Even today, my recollection of them contains something resembling respect. So he's confessing here about kind of the horrible way that he treated women, and then later about how he lived this debaucherous lifestyle. And again, all of this is, in a sense, to love himself, to lose his connections with other people, in some ways to lose himself. He's trying to find himself, lose it and find it. Again, he's a mysterious character, full of contradictions. This shortly after this leads into, as he's developing this idea of guilt, leads into the little ease. To be sure, you are not familiar with that dungeon cell that was called the Little Ease in the Middle Ages. In general, one has forgotten there for life. One was forgotten there for life. That cell was distinguished from others by ingenious dimensions. It was not high enough to stand up in, nor yet wide enough to lie down in. One had to take on an awkward manner and live on the diagonal. Sleep was a collapse, and waken a squatting. Mon cher, there was genius, and I am weighing my words in that simple invention. So he's talking about the genius of this torturing cell where a person cannot actually lay down and they can't actually fully stand up in. Every day, through the unchanging restriction that stiffened his body, the condemned man learned that he was guilty, and that innocence consists in stretching joyously. Can you imagine in that cell a frequenter of summits and upper decks? What? One could live in those cells and still be innocent? Improbable. Highly improbable. And I'm reminded here of Kafka's In a Penal Colony, very much this torture device, even though it's not as gruesome and bloody as Kafka's. It seems to be serving the same purpose. And this Jean-Baptiste has the same interest in it as the commander from In a Penal Colony. Or else my reasoning would collapse. That innocence should be reduced to live-in hunchback. I refuse to entertain for a second such a hypothesis. Moreover, we cannot assert the innocence of anyone, whereas we can state with certainty the guilt of all. Again, he's very much interested in the fact that we're all guilty. Every man testifies to the crime of all the others. That is my faith and my hope. So we are all guilty, and we're trying to find a way to redeem ourselves. And developing this idea a little further, and it's a little further into the book, he says here, in short, you see, the essential is to cease being free and to obey in repentance a greater rogue than oneself. And now I'm not exactly sure what he means here when he says cease being free, but I think he's referencing kind of a submission to perhaps to Christ, as he's seeing that as you're no longer free. But then, of course, this has kind of certainly a blasphemous tone in the way he's describing Christ. When we are all guilty, that will be democracy. Without counting, cher ami, that we must take revenge for having to die alone. Death is solitary, whereas slavery is collective. The others get theirs too, and at the same time as we. That's what counts, all together at last, but on our knees and heads bowed. Death is solitary, whereas slavery is collective. And while he doesn't fully explain what he means by this, and like most of the things he's saying, it can be vague, it can be mysterious. Again, I think he's referencing this return to a belief, a religious belief, a belief in a creator, as opposed to the total freedom of not believing. And I think that's the slavery that he's talking about. Slavery is collective. In the end, he reveals the fact that, he's only interested in confessions. He's been speaking for 5 days, confessing all of kind of his sins because he's hoping that his listener will confide in him and confess to him. This is what he kind of lives for, the confessions. And at the end, he seems to, or he talks as if he is merging with this listener, right? He says, then please tell me what happened to you one night on the quays of the Seine and how you managed never to risk your life. So again, he's talking to this character, but he's putting that character in the same position that he was in. So now they're one. You yourself utter the words that for years have never ceased echoing through my nights, and that I shall at last say through your mouth. So he's speaking through his listener's mouth. O young woman, throw yourself into the water again, so that I may a second time have the chance of saving both of us. A second time, eh? What a risky suggestion. So he's saying, yes, go ahead, woman, throw yourself in the water again. I'll have a chance to save you again. But then right after that, he's acknowledging that he's not going to be able to do it. He's still going to be inactive. He's still flawed. And in that way, I think this novel ends on a quite bleak note that there is, it's 147 pages, kind of a monologue of exploring what it means to be human and to be inhabiting this kind of Blakean fallen world, and to be guilty and to know that you need to redeem yourself, but not being able to. In that regards, it's also, again, a lot like Kafka's world. And as always with Camus, there's hints of Melville throughout this novel. All right, that's it. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed this. Thank you.